Good morning, Vision. All right. I am so excited to present this message. And, we've been doing summer through the Psalms. And what I've been doing is I took the book of Psalms and I listened to it on my Bible app. And that's right, I listened to it. And so when you put it on the message version, you can tap a little button and it actually reads it to you. And the guy who's reading it in the message version, he's very passionate about what he's saying and how he's talking. And so I'll take and put it in my pocket, and while I'm walking the dog, I'll listen to it, or driving on my way to work, or just my personal time with the Lord, I'll listen to it, and it really gives you the sense in the Psalms of how it really isn't just words on a paper, it's a prayer. There's genuine and sincere prayers that are occurring. And I would suggest that you do that. It really has impacted my spiritual walk. And so I was listening to Psalm 77, and it just really had an impact on me because I felt as though the psalm was really speaking in a way in which I think all of us kind of always feel. We get to a point to where we want to ask God for help, but then we question because we feel like God's not really there. And then we have to come back around to the point to where, okay, God, well, what are you going to do? How are you going to help me? Type thing. And so if you look at Psalm 77, there was a man named Asaph who wrote it. And you probably ask, well, who was Asaph? So I'm going to tell you who he is. So this gentleman was the big dog. He was the one that was in charge of the worship and the praise and the songs that went up to God in connection to the Ark of the Covenant. Now, some of y'all may not be familiar with the Ark of the Covenant. And so the Ark of the Covenant was this thing, and it represented the presence of God. It was this huge chest, and it was made of gold and wood and all these different things. But the idea of it is that it held the rod of Aaron, right? It had a small jar in it that had manna in it that had came down from heaven to help the Israelites. And also inside of it was the Ten Commandments. And the power of this Ark of the Covenant was just extremely odd and interesting when you read through the Bible, because you see that the actual presence of God is with this thing. And so it's so powerful that they take it out to wars with them, and they win wars, right? It goes out ahead of them. It's steady in wartime, and they win wars because of it. There's an interesting story where the Philistines, they actually take the Ark of the Covenant, they bring it into their temple with their God, and they close the door, and they're like, we got these Israelites. Nah, they don't got the Ark of the Covenant. We got them. We stole it from them. And then the Ark of the Covenant sitting in there with this huge statue that's their representative of their God, and it's huge and it's big. And what ends up happening is they open up the door to the temple and walk in, and they see their God fell on the ground right in front of the Ark of the Covenant, almost as if it's worshiping the Ark of the Covenant. They're like, yo, what's going on? What I got? Like, lift him up, and he's good now. Let's close the door. They come back the next morning. The statue was down on the ground again. The head is busted off. They're like, yo, what has just happened? And then a couple more months happen, and then next thing you know, they're getting this weird thing where they don't have any food, and they're getting diseases. And so the religious leaders get together and they say, yo, look, we've got to get rid of this Ark of the Covenant. It represents real power. There's real power hooked into this thing. We got to get it out of here. And so they work to get it out of there. They give it back to the Israelites. The Israelites they're just happy it's back there. And one of David's men is actually carrying the Ark. And the Ark of the Covenant was interesting. You had to carry it a certain way. And you had to have cloth over it. You couldn't really look at it. And so, because if you did, you would die. Well, one of David's men made the mistake of touching it. Homeboy died on the spot. It's like, wow, like there's some serious power. It's almost this sense of its power, but there's a seriousness, right? There's this seriousness about how powerful he is. And so You take Asaph and you say, look, man, there's this thing called the Ark of the Covenant. We're going to build a special tent for it. Eventually, we're going to build a special temple for it, and we're going to put it in this place where only the priest can get to it, and it represents the presence of God. It represents the hope of this nation. This is a big deal, Asaph. If you don't do it right, if you don't minister around it right, you could die. You got the job, Asaph. I'd be like, yo, no, we got to find somebody else to do that. Like, you're not, right? And if someone told you, say, look, there's a special job we want you to do, but you could die. Like, nah, I'm good. You can find somebody else to do that. But see, Asaph had such a presence about him that didn't even scare him. He wasn't fearful of that. He said, yes, I'll step into that role. So he was in charge of making sure the praise and the worship and the words around this serious presence of God was genuine and true, and it was done the right way. But the other thing that Asaph saw, he saw the triumph and some of the falls of the Israelite nation, right? He saw when David was just so successful. And I would think Asaph would even see David. David would be one of his heroes, right? David is a hero to us, but he really is a hero to the Jewish nation. And, the whole Davidic culture and the Davidic kingdom, it's all the hopes of even the Jewish nation right now. They look back to that time and they pull hope from it. And just think, Asaph was inside of that thickness, that rawness of God just showing up and doing things and being awesome on the Israelites' behalf. And he witnessed it because he was so close to David. But at the very same time, he saw the downward spiral sometimes of the Israelite nation, right? When David was about to die and his sons began to fight over who was going to be king. And it looked like there's a lot of turmoil going on, and the Israelite nation is losing their footing. And oh my gosh, the nation is worried. What's going on? And then all of a sudden now Solomon comes in to reign as the king. And things are fine. Now we're like, oh, okay, things are good. And the nation feels good. But all of a sudden, Solomon begins to go in a different direction, right? A direction that's not of God. And all of a sudden, things start to spin out of control again, right? The nation has this downward spiral. There's a huge civil war. The nation splits down the middle. You got the northern kingdom and the southern kingdom now. And some parts of those kingdoms don't even want anything to do with the temple or the priests. And next thing you know, an enemy comes in and destroys the temple, burns it down. And so Asaph is inside of all this, right? Because he is the one that's in charge of all the words and the ideas and the praise that goes up in and around this Ark of the Covenant. And his family members were ones that did a ton of things in the temple, right? So when this army came and destroyed the temple and killed all the priests, those were his family members dying. So there was this interesting connection he had in this moment in time, and his heart is being poured out onto these pages. So we need to paint a picture in our head and in our hearts. This is not just a story. This is not a story. This is a man's heart being poured out. Just as if someone gave you a pen and said, pour your heart out. That's what this man did. That's who Asaph is. So, as you read through it, and as we will read through it, you'll see it gives you this beautiful picture of genuine prayer. Say genuine prayer. We're going to really dig into the idea of what genuine prayer looks like. Because sometimes we're scared of genuine prayer because we think we're going to hurt God's feelings. Or, oh my God, God's going to get mad at me. Or no. This man digs into genuine prayer. There's three things we're going to look at. We're going to look at his genuine pouring out of his heart. There's a genuine pouring out of his heart onto this paper. The second thing is that there's this interesting questioning of God's timing and plan. This interesting questioning of God's timing in his plan. And then the third thing is that there is this reflection on God's goodness. in the past. There's this reflection of who God genuinely is to me. He reflects on that. So let's talk about this. Let's jump in. The first thing we're looking at is this genuine pouring out of the heart. Let's read in the Message Bible. So I'm going to start in verse 1 and go through to verse 6. I yell out to my God. I yell out with all my might. I yell at the top of my lungs. He listens. I found myself in trouble and I went looking for my Lord. When friends said, hey, everything will turn out all right, I didn't believe a word they said. I remember God and I shake my head. I bow my head, then I wring my hands. I'm awake all night, not a wink of sleep. I can't even say what's bothering me. I go over the days one by one. I ponder the years gone by. I strum my lute, that's a guitar, all through the night, wondering how to get my life together. Whew. That brother's hurt. He's hurting. There's things going on in his heart that keep him up all night long. You see this interesting battle going on between his faith and his feelings. He starts off with, I'm stretching my arms out to you. I'm yelling out to you, God. I'm crying out because I need your help, God. So, the only reason you do that is because you feel as though someone will answer. So there's faith there. He knows to look for God. But at the very same time, he's up all night. He's doing this with his hands all night. You see this visual picture of this man who is just in the face of the presence of a God every day. And he doesn't have a clue. He's on the edge of his own bed. Even though he's nose to nose and face to face with the presence of God on a daily basis, he's still befuddled, confused, no direction, no guidance. His heart is failing in the department of trusting God, and he has no idea what to do. Just imagine if a man that spent that much time in the presence of God, if he would struggle, well, it would make sense that we would struggle, right? It would make sense that would happen to us, right? That there would be this battle between our faith and our feelings, that we would have enough about us to be able to say, hey, I need to ask God for help in this situation. But then after we pray, after we read, after we went to the church service, after we heard the word, we go to bed at night and we're like, oh man, God, are you really going to show up? Are you really going to do that for me, God? Is it really going to happen this way, God? And this is what you do on the edge of your bed. You see, our feelings have a subjective idea tied into them, right? Because the reality we see, it really is tied into my perception, how I'm perceiving things, right? Because reality is reality. But at the same time, depending on where I'm standing and what's going on, my reality can look bleak or it can look good, right? I can get done with church and read the word and be like, oh man, I spent some good time with God. Yeah, life is good. But then, getting a little argument with my wife, getting a little argument with my son, and God forbid the paycheck don't show up. You're like, oh gosh. Everything's crumbling, God. Everything is going bad. Where are you at, God? What's going on with you, God? But yesterday you was like in church, like, woo, he's real. What happened? But that's genuine, right? And not how it works. We're human. We're but dirt. So that's how it happens. And that's what Asaph is saying. That's what he's going through. You see, as we begin to dive in just a little bit deeper, when you look at the NASB, the New American Standard Bible version, he starts out by saying, my voice rises to God and I will cry aloud. Say cry. That word cry has this interesting idea of wailing. Say wailing. See, wailing is something that the Jewish nation and Israelites were very familiar with, because that's what they did when someone died, when someone passed away. And we already talked about how this man had people who had died in his family because they were entrusted with the word of God, and then they came through and they were slain. And he's like, God, why would you let that happen to them? I can see these other people who aren't doing the right thing, but these people who just been guarding the presence of God, you're going to let them be slain? And he pulls back and he's like, why would you allow something like that to happen? There's this wailing that happens, and it's a deep hurt. And the only thing that can come out is tears and pain. You need to try that someday. You need to try that after we leave church. You need to try that in your next spiritual time with the Lord, because there is a deep sense sometime of hurt and pain. You ever had that? And the only way it's going to come out is if you just let it come out on its own, and it pours out because there's so much hurt and pain, and the reality hurts so bad. You ever watch an interview and you see someone talking and then all of a sudden they start crying? And you see the emotion is real, and it's so real, you start doing what? You're like, oh, you're like, I know you, baby girl. I see you crying. I know, it's real. And the emotion is so real to you, right? That's my son, he's crazy. The emotion is so real to you that you start crying, right? And we can tell when it's fake, but when it's real, it brings something out of us, right? This wailing of emotions, and it's so real. You see, he begins to go deeper. And he says, not only am I crying out with this grieving of hurt and pain, God, but I'm yelling it out. He says, I yell out to my God. I yell with all my might. Say yell. See, the idea of yelling lends the idea of not just how loud something is, but how important and big something is. See, because I only get loud when something's important. Right? I don't walk around and say, hey, can you fix me a sandwich? I need a sandwich. Hey, where my car? You know where my car keys is at? I need to tie my shoes. We don't do that, right? But when it's important, we get loud. Because we want those words to reverberate inside of the brain of those individuals. We want them to remember it. We want those ideas to bounce around inside of the brain and to never forget it, that it's real and that it's true. And we want it to stick inside of their soul. And this is what he's talking about. This is what's going on inside of him. You ever felt that way? I know I have. You see, he has this interesting way of just using this poetic language and knowledge. He says again in the New American Standard Bible, he says, in the night my hand was stretched out to you. My hand was stretched out to you. See that idea? Say stretch. That word stretch lends the idea of pouring. Something being poured out. You see, he's stretching his arms out. He's not just stretching his physical arms out, he's stretching his heart out to God. He's pouring out emotions to God. It's coming out. It's pouring. You ever pour a glass of water and try to stop? Does it stop very quickly? No, you're going to make a mess if you try to stop it. You have to do it slow and bring it back slow because it's overwhelming. The pouring comes out in an overwhelming manner. And this is what he's talking about. And he stretches his arms out. Well, why do you stretch your arms out? Why would you stretch your arms? We only usually stretch our arms out because we're going to lift something. We're going to do something. We're stretching our arms out because we're expecting something. And that's what he's doing. He's stretching out his arms in expectancy for God to do something awesome for him. And he's very familiar with that idea of stretching his heart out, stretching his arms out, because he's in the presence of God constantly. He's nose to nose and face to face with the presence of God all the time. His heart reaches out to that spirit and that presence of God constantly. He knows the power that he's reaching out for. So that's a great question for you. Do you know Do you understand the power you're reaching out for with your prayers? You say, God, help me. But do you really understand the power you unleash in your life? That's what Asaph is saying. He said, my problems are big, but I endlessly lift my arms out to you. I'm going to consistently unleash this awesome power into my life. I don't care what it looks like. He says, I strum my lute all night. Say night. The interesting thing about that word night is it's a very poetic way of him talking about our darkest hours and our darkest times and when those darkest times come on us. Typically, it comes on you at night. You can't sleep. You can't think about anything else. But that may not be your time. That might not be your night. Say night. Your night may occur in front of your computer at work. Your night may occur with a broom in your hand as you sweep. Your night may occur while you're cleaning out a car. Your night may occur on your way driving to work. I don't know when your night occurs, but it's going to occur. And when it does occur, what will be your thoughts? What will be your actions? Because this man is being real. He's saying, look, I don't know what to do. I do this. I don't act like I have the answers. I just do this. He said, I'm wringing my hands the whole night long. This is what I do. This is my answer. Because there is no answer. This man that spends tons of time in the presence of God, this is his answer. So please, beloved, do not feel like you're not close to God because this is your only answer. Sometimes this is the right answer. Sometimes on the end of your bed, meditating on a situation and thinking about what God may do, sometimes that's right where he wants you. He begins to go on into this interesting dialogue where he begins to question the timing of God. He begins to question God's timing and plan. He says, will the Lord walk off and leave us for good? Will he never smile again? Is his love worn, thin, born? Has the salvation promise burned out? Has God forgotten his manners? Has he angrily stalked off and left us? Just my luck, I said. This sounds like something I would say. The high God goes out of business just the moment I need him. Interesting, right? Questions in succession. No pause. I love how Spurgeon does it in his commentary. He says, this is the question of questions. This is the questions that one answers with questions. You ever get in a situation where you don't really want answers? You just have questions. God, why'd you make it happen like that? God, why are you messing with my money like that? God, why are you messing with my kids like that? God, why are you making things happen like that? And we're not waiting for anything. It's questions with questions. It's a representative of hurt and pain, right? You need to question God. It's good. It's good to do that. You see, how many of us have asked those questions before? We've done that process over and over and over and over again. And we get into this interesting pattern. See, sometimes we approach God as if he does not know what we think. I'm not going to say that because I'll make God mad. Listen. God knows what you think before you say it. He always knows what you think before you say it. Don't be worried that you will hurt God's feelings. Don't be worried that God will be disappointed in you. If he was going to be disappointed in you, he wouldn't have died, rose, took your sin, and saved you. He saved you when you were dirty and nasty, and in your filthiest sin, he saved you. There's no word you can say that will hurt his feelings. You have to put yourself in a position where there's this serious genuineness coming out of your heart towards him. So what are the questions? What are the deepest, dirtiest questions about who God is in your life? If you haven't began to do that, if you're a student, if you're an adult, and you worship the living God, start that process. If you don't, someone will come along and snatch your faith from you. And they'll ask you the question that you've never asked yourself. And you'll have no answer. You'll have nothing to bind down your faith. You see, he begins to share with us on this paper in such a way that we think, oh my gosh, this guy is talking like he doesn't even believe in God. I mean, what if Pastor Matt got up here and began to question God like that in front of everyone? We would think less of him. We'd be like, oh my gosh, we probably don't want to let him preach anymore. Someone needs to do some counseling. Let's get Pastor Matt some counseling, because what's going on is he is questioning his faith. This is not a good thing. Listen, this guy Asaph, he was the man. He was in charge of the words that went around this representative presence of God. He was not fearful to say those words. He guarded his words because he knew how important those words were in the presence of God. And he still let that anguish go and questioned those things. So if this man who realized words were important could let go that anguish without fear, why not us? Why would we be fearful to ask those stinging questions? He's trying to let us know it's important. You need to ask those stinging questions. He begins to move in a different direction now, and he begins to reflect on the goodness of God in the past. He begins to reflect on the goodness of God in the past. Once again, I'll go over what God has done. Lay out on the table the ancient wonders. I'll ponder all the things you've accomplished and give a long, loving look. Say long, loving look at your acts. Oh God, your way is holy. No God is great like God. You're the God who makes things happen. Whew, I like that. You showed everyone what you can do. You pulled your people out of the worst kind of trouble and rescued the children of Jacob and Joseph. You see, we have the ability to remember our most genuine experiences with God. Our most genuine experiences with God, they fuel us when we have no hope. Our ability to remember our most undeniably genuine moments with God will fuel us. You remember that time when the praise and worship was so good that the hair stood up on your arms and you just about blacked out? Oh, he was real then, wasn't he? Remember when you were on your knees and on your face and you were just praying that he would do that thing inside of your child, and he did it. Remember you were on your knees and you just didn't have enough money to do it, and all of a sudden, boom, there go the money. Oh my gosh, you knew he was real then. Asaph says, look. Remember those moments when you know he was real. Go back to that moment. Go back to remember that moment. He begins to remember how God did awesome things with his ancestors. That is no small and light thing for him to bring that up, because those were the staple moments that got Israel through things. Those were the staple moments that they depended on those moments to get them through. So, what is your moment that gets you through? What is your undeniably most genuine experience you've ever had with the Lord Jesus Christ? What is it? Was it when you got saved? Was it when you got married? Was it when you had children, students? Was it when you got saved? Was it when you just came from camp? When was it? When was it? You better find it. You need to find it. This is the idea, because when you find it, you go back to it. When you find it, you go back to it. Say, go back to it. Use it, because it will gird you up. It will make you strong. It will bring you back to remember how big God is and how small our problems are. So it don't matter if it's your finances. You got a big God. It don't matter if it's your children, because you got a big God. It doesn't matter if it's school, because you got a big God. It doesn't matter if it's depression. Suicide, angst, anxiety, it does not matter because you gird all your hope and truth on the fact that God did something for you. Now listen, this book has words in it. And we can have people mentor us all day long. But I'm going to tell you, you can read this book all day long, and you can get mentored till you're blue in the face. But until you get an experience with God that moves you, you will struggle. And this wringing of your hands on the edge of your bed, this will be the end game for you. Because you will never be able to do this and then do this and say, God, you remember that moment? I want that moment. I remember that moment. I remember who you are. I remember how you moved. I remember what you did in my children. I remember what you did in my dad. I remember what you did with my disease. I remember what you did when I lost that loved one. I remember what you did. I'm stretching out. I'm pouring out. I remember. And it's all pinned on your moment. Say your moment. It's not pinned on your parents' moment. It's not pinned on the guy who got you saved moment. It's not pinned on the strong Christian at church. It's not pinned on my moment. It's not pinned on Pastor Matt's message. It is pinned on your moment. Go find your moment. Use it to fuel you. In closing, be genuine in your approach to God. Be genuine in your approach to God. Say genuine. Genuineness breeds deeper intimacy. We know that, right? Genuineness breeds deeper intimacy. Don't be scared to be genuine, truly genuine with Jesus, because it will put you in a place where you will remember and experience God for who he truly is. Remember your moment.